Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Each episode, you'll dive into conversations with top entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business leaders, unlocking the secrets to building profitable relationships that drive growth and success. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, presented by LeDuc Entertainment. Today we are joined by John Mashni, who is an attorney, an entrepreneur, a sought-after speaker, a movie producer, and a children's book author. Oh my gosh, you wear so many hats. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Adrian. Great to be chatting with you. Very excited.
John, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and all the different hats you wear and things you do?
Yeah, seems like there's a lot going on, but yeah, I'm a lawyer by training. I worked for about 10 years before I went to law school. So went to film school, ran a media department, had my own production company. So I love anything audio, video. I love marketing, anything marketing related. I love it. Probably love it more than practicing law, to be honest. Love telling stories, kind of worked in that space for a very long time and still do professionally, both, working in the movie entertainment space and then as an attorney in that space too. But I just love all that kind of stuff. I've written a ton online, written over 100 articles and nonfiction type articles, and then started telling my own stories. Actually took the stories I told my kids, turned them into actual children's books, and started sharing them with the world, which was a little scary, to be honest. Starting, being a lawyer, business lawyer, in some very kind of high stakes conversations and discussions and disputes, to now create stories for kids. It was a big change up, but it's actually been super fun. So yeah, and have children's books out that I do with my kids and my wife as a family. We write them together. Very fun, and one of the most fun things I get to do. And yeah, and really as a lawyer, work with business owners, entrepreneurs, and creative people, serving as like their advisor in the legal space, but sometimes non-legal too. And just transactional lawyer, making things happen, buying business, selling businesses, being as kind of like an outside general counsel and advisor for very successful entrepreneurs and creative people.
So in your legal space, when people come to you and need help with legal issues, what are some of the pain points and problems that you're helping them solve?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, usually they come to me because of a legal issue. Sometimes it's, hey, I want to start a business. Hey, can you help just starting it? Whether it's, formation, contracts, intellectual property, lots of intellectual property. That's one of the areas that I specialize in. It's partnership, figuring out issues related to that. So, anywhere from formation to, hey, I have some intellectual property. I don't know how to protect it, particularly ideas, working with a lot of entrepreneurs that have information in their head or they're using in their business, working with them, learning how or teaching them how to protect ideas as part of their business portfolio, particularly when it comes to making sure that they protect their intellectual property in their business. And one of the things too, visionary entrepreneurs often they have these grand ideas, they just don't know how to protect them. So that's one of the areas where I would say, like, I'm really good, really, really specialty areas of mine. One of them, at least, is taking someone's ideas and helping them learn how to protect them in the best possible way from an intellectual property perspective, but also, in the space of just general business agreements, general business transactions, always dealing with that kind of stuff. Like it's always super useful to have a business mind that has a legal background that can give advice to a business owner, an entrepreneur. And even I have a very strong tax background. I've taught tax at a very, very high level in some LLM programs at law schools. And so I really have a strong kind of finance, legal, tax background. And, I bring that to the table when I'm working with a business owner and entrepreneur. It really, people really look for those skills because I can kind of bring my marketing background, obviously, my, audio visual, my entertainment background and my IP background, and then marry that to some of the legal issues that arise. People really, I think, appreciate that, especially since a lot of times I've been in their shoes from an entrepreneurial perspective.
What are some of the common mistakes that you see people making when they go to found a business and form a business, and how can those mistakes be avoided?
Oh my gosh, great question. Number one, I think, is choosing your partners wisely, right? I think that's the number one thing. I made my myself made that mistake too. But ultimately, you can't make the right deal with the wrong person, number one. So making sure you're really vetting out the people that you're going to be working with, even if it's not a partnership, even if it's just a business relationship. So that's number one. Number two, I think, is getting good advisors from the beginning. Whether it's not just legal either, right? From a tax and accounting perspective, and depending on the type of business that you're starting, you want to have the right advisors in your corner. So I think those are two of the big ones. I think another one that I see a lot is just not understanding the intellectual property that you have that's a part of your business, what's most important, that what's really valuable at business and what's not. Then understanding like how that relates to your budget. Hey, if I'm not the person that says just spend all this money if you don't have it, or if there's higher uses or needs elsewhere. Make sure you understand like, hey, what is the most important thing that I need to protect, and let's get some advice on how to protect that.
When it comes to, now this might seem like the most ignorant question ever I'm about to throw at you, so please forgive me if it is. But when it comes to protecting your intellectual property, could you explain the difference between a trademark and a copyright?
Sure.
Was that a bad question? Was that an ignorant question?
No, I love it. You're going pure legal. Most of the time, this is super boring for people, but let me put it this way. There are two types of intellectual property, and I deal with both of them probably on a daily basis. So number one, I think, is there is a distinction between them. So they're not interchangeable. So that if you know that, you probably know more than 95% of the people out there, right? There's a difference between them. Let's start with a copyright. What is a copyright? What is subject to copyright? Copyright is it's a work of authorship that is fixed in some tangible medium of expression. That's the purely legal, language from the Copyright Act. But here's a translation. An idea is not protectable. It's in your head. But if you take an idea out of your head and you put it in some fixed medium, like for example, a book, you write a book. It could be an electronic book. It could be a book. I'm trying to grab a book. Nothing's in, within reach, but you have a physical copy of a book, right? And you take your idea. Yeah, there you go. Monster. Okay, there you go. You publish that book or you print it. That is an idea that is a work of authorship that is expressed in a tangible medium, right? On paper. That is protectable by copyright. Okay. And when it's in that medium, that's protectable by copyright. And it's not just books, right? A song. If you have the sheet music to a song, or you record a song, a video game, a piece of software, marketing material, advertisement, right? Those are all things that are subject to copyright. A film, subject to copyright, right? Because it's fixed in some medium of expression, even if it's digital, okay? Those are things that are protectable by copyright. And one of the biggest mistakes people make is that they think, they hear sometimes what they call poor man's copyright, which is if I put it in an envelope and mail it to myself, then have you heard of this?
Mm-hmm.
So you put it in an envelope and you mail it to myself, then it's just as good as it protects my copyright. Well, there are some truths to it, okay? But I think it's a horrible way to protect your copyright. There's much better ways. And the most, I think, appropriate and the best way that I would tell anyone is file a copyright application and get a registration. So that's what a copyright is. It protects an original work of authorship. So it's something original to you, and that expression of it is fixed in some medium. That's what copyright protects. And anyone that's creating content, it could be an interview, could be a video, film, movie, book, television show, that is protectable by copyright. And if you're doing any of those things, you need someone that has experience in copyright to help you protect it. Now, also, if you're hiring someone to create intellectual property for you that is subject to copyright, hiring someone to edit a video, hiring someone to create a video, hiring someone to create a piece of writing for you, marketing copy, or it could be something like fiction. Again, that's where you want to think through in your contracts. Are you protecting yourself through copyright, the proper language? Okay,
right.
So that's copyright. Now, trademark, how's that different? A trademark is a source identifier for goods or services. What does that mean?
Okay.
Copyright exists to protect the public. So if you sell a service or you sell a good, then you're informing the public of where that good or service comes from, who's supplying it. And it protects the public because then they know, hey, goods that have this trademark on them come from a certain company, right? Potentially your company, right? And I see you've got some trademarks in the back of your, in your background, right? And that's exactly how it works. And a trademark could be a word or a slogan or a series of words or a logo or a design. In some cases, a sound, if that sound is associated with a good or a service, then it could be a sound as well. But that's the difference.
Okay, so
The
like
copyright protects.
I'm loving it would be a trademark.
That's right. That's right. Right. And the same way, how do you protect a trademark? You can apply for a registration. There's federal registrations, there's state registrations. In general, I recommend people go the federal route if they can. Sometimes you can't for various reasons, but that's the difference. That's the distinction. If you're creating content in some medium, then we want to think about copyright. If you're creating a good, if you're selling a good or service under a certain brand or name or image, then that's protectable by trademark. And it could actually be both cases where you're. However, what I would say is that you want to understand the two of those types and the interplay between them. So I don't know if that makes sense or if that was
No,
just
definitely. It's the
but,
most.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that's the most clear definition I've ever heard of that. So thank you very much. And I'm curious. It's funny because you do work in the film space. And I'm someone who has written some spec scripts and tried to.
Oh, I
throw
love
them
it.
out there.
Let's talk about it. Yeah, I love it.
And there's always that debate of, do you copyright a spec script or do you? Well, I registered it with the WGA, and
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I tell people do that all the time.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about your work in the film field?
Sure. So I many years ago, it's 25 years ago now, I went to film school in New York. Had a great experience, really cool.
Did you go to NYU?
I went to New York Film Academy. So I spent a summer
nice.
there. Went around New York with a camera and a crew, very small crew, and carrying big light box behind me and camera kit. And, took the train to shoot, shot in the city. We did classes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we shot. So it was great.
Wow.
We rotated
trial by fire.
roles. So it was very crazy, very busy. But it was an amazing experience. So that was 25 years ago now. And I kind of came back from New York and thought, I don't know if I want to live in New York or LA, but I really love telling stories. So how can I do that? And when I came back, I started my own production company. I started doing freelance audio and video. In fact, when I was in New York, we actually shot 16 millimeter film. We didn't even have digital, right? Do you remember, actual film cameras, or we had these big Steenbeck editing machines where I was cutting my own film, really crazy. You have to go in at night. You can't take anything flammable in there with you. And you would just chop with the little razor blade, and you had to wear gloves and stuff. But I did that, and I came back, and I felt like I still wanted to do something with storytelling and narrative and just being in that space. So I had my own production company. I started working at a company, and I ran their media department. I did audio and video. I edited audio for years, edited video, and then did marketing. And really thought that that's what I was going to do. And just through various circumstances, there was a change in the business, and I kind of flatlined for a couple of years. And then my wife kind of said, "Hey, you should go to law school." And it just crazy set of circumstances. Very quickly, within less than a year, said pivoted. Okay, let's go to law school. And never thought I'd be doing anything film entertainment related. But when I graduated, some of my old film buddies came to me and said, "John, can you help us with our film? We don't like lawyers, but we like you." And so then it turned into, okay, I started working on film projects, and then helped sell a television show, and then started working with authors and started working in the music field. And it just became a part of what I do, just working in the entertainment space. And I always liked entrepreneurs. And then it was like, I realized filmmakers are just entrepreneurs. They're just doing it in an artistic way. So that's really how I got involved. And to this day, I still work with filmmakers. I still work with people in the entertainment media space, work with entertainment or production companies. And then I work with filmmakers just on my own, producing movies and having a great time doing it.
Were there any sort of life lessons that you learned on a film set that then later helped you in the courtroom?
Well, tons of lessons. I think, just if for anyone that's been on a set, I think there is this kind of like camaraderie that builds. Right?
Absolutely.
You feel you develop very close friendships because you're in very close quarters for very long periods of time. Right?
It's adult summer camp.
It's exactly right. One of the things I learned, and this came from my acting background too. I used to act, but one of the things I learned personally was number one, even though there might be small roles, there's no unimportant role, right? Meaning just because if you think you have a very small role, it could be like, hey, you have a small part, you're as an actor, you still need to bring every part of you and the seriousness that the role, demands, but also don't think it's a throwaway. Don't think just because it's a small role that it doesn't matter. I mean, every person is important on that set. And especially when you start looking at budgets, right? Like everybody is there because they have to be there because it's an important role. And the little things and the people that might, if you look at it, you might say, oh, this person's not as important because their role is smaller. It's like, no, it could be an acting or speaking role. It could be somebody that's just a PA, like that's just helping. It's like, no, every role is important. And you need to bring, if you're in that role, you need to bring everything, all of you, the focus, the attention to detail, all of that. You need to make it as good as you can make it. So that's one of the greatest things I've learned, just being on sets, is like, don't think that your role is not important, and don't think that somebody in that role isn't as important, because they are. They're a person, and one bad person that doesn't take it seriously can cause a bunch of money to be lost, can cause you can't, the scene doesn't work, or potentially things just go awry. So I mean, honestly, that's one of the best lessons I've learned just being involved in the space, period.
You're just casually dropping on a Monday one of the most profound lines I've ever heard. Just because you have a small role doesn't mean it's not an important role. My God.
It's true, don't you think?
It's absolutely correct. But I was like, I don't know if you rewind the tape, you can see my reaction to when you said that was sort of profound, and you just dropped it casually.
No, I tell you, it's so, to me, and just to restate it, right? Like, it's so easy to think it's all about the director, it's all about the lead actor or lead actors. Like, no, I think a movie gets made because a lot of people sacrifice. A lot of people go the extra mile. It's actually hard work that people don't realize. They think it's a little bit glamorous. When you look behind the camera, you got people sweating, people working very long hours, people not eating, or people like just giving everything that they have, probably underpaid, right? At some level. And you can't neglect, you can't skip over that. The people are making sacrifices to get some artistic vision, represented. And to me, it's like, you can't neglect those people. It's super grateful. And especially if you are one of those people, I think you got to treat them well.
Absolutely. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, now this might be another one of those big loaded questions I'm going to throw at you, but there's so much emerging technology right now, with the emergence of AI and everything. Yeah. I mean, obviously that's going to have a huge, huge impact on the film industry. What impact, I'm curious, what impact, A, do you think that's going to have on the film industry? But B, do you think that that's going to have any sort of an impact on the legal industry? And if so, what do you think that impact's going to be?
Oh my gosh. You're asking me tough
loaded questions, I know.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. I mean, I think AI is going to affect everything.
Right.
And it already has. And I think we're just at the beginning of the beginning. Frankly, we're just at the beginning. I mean, from an entertainment perspective, a lot of times when, I've done legal on some big studio movies, and a lot of times one of the key contractual terms is AI allowed to be used? Are writers, or is a studio or production company allowed to use AI in a script? Is AI allowed to be used in visual effects? Are the actors required to submit facial scans? And can those facial scans be used, or who actually owns that data? Those are all issues that are popping up. And, some of those recent strikes in some of the unions or the guilds are all because of these issues, because they want to get these ironed out. So I think there's no question that AI and these emerging technologies are already having an impact in the entertainment space. And I think they're going to be it's going to be amplified. I do think at some point you could create a movie just through AI, and you see some of the video AI recreations are incredible. They're only going to get better. I do think it's going to be possible at some point to create films without actors.
Right.
I mean, I do think so. You just take the script and you could create the film. Maybe we're a little ways off from that, but probably not far off from that. And really the creative, whoever has the idea, the creative is really going to have an advantage in learning how to use those tools. So more than just, I think, being worried about AI replacing. I think it's going to be someone that uses AI and understands how to use it, either to create new content or to make content at a drastically lower cost.
Right.
That's where there's going to be a real competitive advantage. I think in the legal space, it's probably similar. I'm not an expert other than I'm trying stuff. I'm using AI myself. I think there is kind of this race to figure out how to use AI better.
Right.
And now everyone's trying to sell you some AI solution. I'm not convinced I need to buy every single one. I'm trying stuff out. But I do think that people that learn how to use it are going to have a massive advantage. So I'm curious actually what you think. Those are my quick thoughts.
Yeah. It's funny. I look forward to it. I think I'm looking. I know that a lot of people think it's, oh, it's stealing from creators. I've heard that argument, and I want to say, okay, I generated this AI image. Who did I steal from? And I think it's also one of those things that I think that any creative person, anything creative, you're taking little bits from things you like. I've recently, you're an author yourself. I've been working on a novel,
Oh, cool.
and I can tell you that there's little bits in there like, ooh, I like Washington Irving. I like Edgar Allan Poe. I like, and just you take little bits and you conglomerate it into something that you call your own personal style. And
Yep.
so I think that it's something that's leveling the playing field. I'm curious, do you think there are any legal regulations that need to happen or need to be put in place regarding AI?
I don't know, to be honest. I have seen a lot of people talking about the regulation of AI. I have seen Terminator
Right.
1,
we're
2, and
close
3.
to Skynet, man. It's
I
happening.
do think, I used to think Google was Skynet. Now I'm not sure who Skynet is. It might be, it might be OpenAI. I'm not sure. But I do think there are risks. I absolutely think there are risks. I'm not oblivious to that fact. So I'm that's where I'm very kind of cautiously optimistic about how can I use AI? How can our clients use AI? How could I use AI to serve our clients better? I think a
Right.
lot of times with AI, people try to think, oh, I can just replace my lawyer. It's like, well, guess what? I use AI too. So a lot of times people send me an agreement and they say, hey, can you review this? Right. And I'll say, well, this literally looks like you use ChatGPT to
Right.
like draft an agreement. Like, guys, I use ChatGPT too. Like, I have probably better AI than somebody else does because I'll use the legal specific and I'll pay for it and I'll make
Right.
sure that I'm not using client info in a non-confidential way. So I think that I'm optimistic about it and I'm excited about it. I do think in basically when the government passes laws, I think a lot of times they don't get it right. They're usually slow to kind of pick up on where things are going. They solve problems that start, that maybe would have solved it 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But it's like
Mm.
there's brand new problems. So I'm not necessarily someone that says the government has to fix everything. I think that in many cases, self-regulation is, if you can do it, it's great. But I also think you got to be smart. You got to see where things are going. You got to pay
Right.
attention. That's where I'm at.
So, it's interesting, and this is probably a little bit of a personal question right now. Like
Yeah,
I'm founding a business with a business partner right now, and I'm curious. I want to throw it back a little bit to the more of the legal side.
sure.
What is your approach to contract negotiations when you're founding a business?
Oh wow. I mean, I think you got to be on the same page on a lot of things when you
Mm.
get started. And if you're having a disagreement, you got to go back to being honest and saying, what are we on the same page on? What do we agree on together? I mean, there's some great books that I've recently come across where how to start a relationship well, right? And I think you have to
Mm.
figure out what you have in common and make sure that you're on the same page, but also where do you differ? And then do you have differing skill sets? And
Mm.
and really like be thoughtful about that. That hey, are you each bringing something different to the table? And if there's any missing skill sets, is there something that you need that you can either pay for or that you can get from somewhere else, and you have the funds or the resources or the
Right.
equity to give to somebody that can do those things. I think
Yeah.
if it's truly contentious at the very beginning, you got to be super careful, right? It's not going to
Right.
get better.
And I'm curious, how can someone sort of, step outside of themselves to say, I'm really good at this, but I'm not good at this, and you are. I mean, do you find,
Yeah, it's a great
in your
question.
practice that people don't really understand what they're not good at sometimes?
Well, Yes, absolutely. And I think things change too over time.
Mm,
On the day you start the company, you might have agreement, like you have 4 founders. A year later, 2 years later, two people don't want to be in the business anymore, right? So there's things you can do. You can have vesting attached, or you can trigger buyout mechanisms. You can think about, hey, the biggest thing is, are you funded? Do you have enough funding? Do you have enough cash, right? Do you have enough working capital to get you to a certain point where you can get to a point where you get to revenue, and then you can maybe hire some other people or bring some other people in. Um, I think there's lots of ways to deal with it. It's more of, hey, you know, getting on the same page at the very beginning and
right.
starting with the things that are most important. What's the core values? What's going to happen if things don't work? Sometimes that's really useful to just talk about those things at the very beginning. And if you can't, I think it's a red flag.
Right. Well, I've got my giant tome here that I pulled out from the shelf behind me, and it is pulling me back to reminded me I needed to ask you. Can you tell me a
Yeah.
little bit? Look, I can put my elbow up on it. Can you tell me a little bit about your authorship and how you got started? You mentioned
Oh
that these
boy.
were stories that you told your children. Can you tell me how? What did you mentioned?
Yeah.
You said 4 books you've written.
4 books out, yeah, that are released. The next 4 are actually
Yeah.
written. I'm in the
Oh
process of
wow.
getting those done. Yeah, so I never thought I would be writing children's books ever in my life until, December 2019. Uh, I was actually writing a nonfiction book about reinventing yourself, and I
Mm,
was super excited. I had a book proposal written. I was trying to, you know, get published, and then I said I'm gonna start writing the book and working on it. And I was doing research, and actually had I still have full outline. Was working on, all the ideas. And a good friend basically said, John, it's going to take you like 15 years or 20 years to write this book, which is, he was right. You need to publish something right away. And
mm,
at that time, I didn't have anything to publish really soon. But same guy came over to my house, and my kids love him. So they were jumping on him. And my kids started telling him some of the bedtime stories that I told the kids. And first of all, the stories were not meant for consumption outside, the kid's bedroom, right? It
right.
was the goal was to make my kids laugh and go to sleep. But they started telling him actually some of the stories that I told him, which for me was embarrassing, because I was like, guys, you're not supposed to share. But he started laughing so much. He was laughing. He was like, John, I found what you got to publish. And what the story that made him laugh the most was the first book that we published, called Cinder Two, which is the story of Cinderella, except when the clock strikes midnight, Cinderella leaves the ball. In the regular story, she loses her slipper, right? And then the prince finds the slipper and has to go around asking the maidens to, put the slipper on.
Right.
My version, I said, no, no, no. The real version of Cinderella is that she picks up the slipper, puts it on, but then she toots. She passes gas, and all the prince has is the smell of her toot to find, his true love. So he has to go around the kingdom asking all the maidens to, pass gas to find Cinderella, and that's Cinder Two. And so my kids were sharing the story with my buddy, and I was so embarrassed. I was like, guys, I was just trying to make you laugh. Like, this is not. And he was like, John, you got to publish this. And I just like, you're crazy. I'm a lawyer. Clients are going to fire me. My firm's going to fire me. I'm like, I'll be ostracized. Like, I can't do it. And I was like, well, I'll just do it under a different name. And then finally I said, well, what if I turn this in a way to teach my kids about how to start a business and how to do something creative,
Mm,
how to actually take an idea and execute on it.
mm.
And that's what I did. That consumed me, and my wife and I said, let's do it together as a family. So I involved my kids in every part of the process in the first book. We had so much fun writing a book, and it's so silly, but everyone that reads the book, they either think it's hilarious and they just can't stop laughing, and they have fun with their own children or grandchildren, or sometimes no children, they just laugh.
Right.
Some people think it's crude or whatever, but I just think I tried to make it beautiful. We had a great artist do the illustrations, award-winning artist. She made it beautiful. And I think the
Mm,
point of the story is, there is a point, which is, don't judge people by their smells or things they can't control. And I think we wrote other stories, Children of Cinder Two, a sequel, Santa Toot, there's a Santa gets stuck in the chimney and there's only one way out. And then Manpunzel, which is kind of my version of Rapunzel. But
mm.
I think the future books are just all going to be stories that I've told my kids, and they're just fun and they're beautiful and they're a little bit silly, a little bit subversive. There's no more toot stories, but they're all just stories I told my kids that, I was just trying to make my kids laugh, Adrian. And and I think what I've learned is that it's so much fun to share that with other parents or grandparents, or frankly, with other people. Just the joy of laughter, the beauty of having a moment of joy and forgetting all the problems in your life just by reading a book, sometimes a silly story, that is priceless. And that is just so much fun to think about how we can share that type of joy.
That's amazing. John, this has been an awesome, awesome conversation. If anybody out there listening could use your help with legal services or would like to check out any of your works, where can the people find you?
Just go to johnmashni.com, JOHNMASHNI.com, and there's ways to reach out. You can learn more about the books. The books are on Amazon, and you can find them on the site too. You can find my writing, and there's a link to find me legally. So I would just say, if you have any questions, I'd love to talk. And you can reach out on the website, johnmashni.com. And Adrian, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Fun chatting with you.
So much for coming on the show, John. This has been awesome.
My pleasure.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Partnerships for Profit, presented by LeDuc Entertainment. John, thank you so much again.
You're welcome. Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.